in your shirt. It's China Spoilers. Welcome to this week's edition of China Spoilers, a weekly podcast where we talk about filmmaking and living in China, because both of those things are what we are doing. I am your host, Emily, and with me as always is Peter. And we are coming to you live to tape from lovely whoopwu studios here in Luzhou, Sichuan, China. This week's topic is how to tell if you've got a good story versus just a pile of good ideas. But first, let's get into it with How's Your Uncle?
Whenever you're ready.
This week was my first week back at school, and I am at the same school that I have been for a while, but it's a new position because they're retooling their English program a little bit. Now I am full-time half day with one class of children, whereas before I was like the elective teacher and I came in and out of every class. I still do that too on top of that, but less of that. And now my primary focus is this one group of 22 to 4-year-olds, which has been an adventure. There's a lot of crying at that age, which you may know. But, I mean, a lot of the kids are happy to be there. There's 3 that as of Friday were still like, I'm not into this. I don't want to be here. And they were kind of crying all day. But I do have a co-teacher who's their Chinese teacher on the half days when I'm not in their classroom. And then we both have 2 aides that work with us who are learning on the job, but they got a lot better. The first day was kind of a mess. I came home and told Peter I made a mistake. But I think things are improving, and I think things will continue to improve. And the kids are very cute, and they already like me a lot. Who wouldn't?
I guess at any age you have your first day of school is upsetting for a lot of people. Maybe even in high school. Maybe you might have like, I got a new outfit, I'm excited, but...
Yeah, but there's that transition from your summer freedom to, I gotta do what now?
And then when you have like little tiny children that are, this isn't what I do, they can't even remember, even if they went to school last year.
Right.
This isn't what we do. Where's yogurt?
Yeah, what the heck is this? And my classroom management focus this week, because this is not something I ever had to deal with before, is teaching children to line up and then walk in a line, because we have to go out to the bathroom all together a couple times a day. And as the blog I found that was like very helpful pointed out, children don't line up at home, especially if they're only children. Like you never have to wait for anything. You never have to go anywhere all in a group. If you are going somewhere, mom or dad or grandma or grandpa is holding your hand. You get all the attention. So this idea of like, okay, now you stand right behind this kid and stay behind him the whole time is like, that's brand new. They never heard of that before. So
especially
that was
with
like,
grandma and grandpa, you're usually tugging them.
They have sole adult attention, and a lot of times there's up to 4 adults paying attention to you at one time. And in our classroom scenario, there's 4 adults paying attention to, 1/5 of you, because there's 20 kids in the class. So that's
it's good to be the kid. Until then.
Yeah, and then like, this blog also pointed out, like, maybe they don't have stairs in their house, so that's something they've never had to deal with before. We live in a city, so kids have had to deal with stairs, I would say.
And we live
not in their house, though, because if they live in an apartment, they don't have to go upstairs, but like...
We're not Chongqing, but we are pretty hilly.
We are pretty hilly. So the kids actually... The stairs are really helpful, because they're challenging enough for their little legs that they all hold on to the railing. When they get older, they start to like try to detour around slower kids. But when we have to go upstairs, that's actually easier because they all hold onto the railing, so then they definitely stay one after the other.
Kind of like our traffic.
Yeah.
In town.
Yeah. But it was challenging, and then like realizing that helped me see like, oh, the fact that we're failing at this 3 out of 4 times in the day, one time we got it right, so we're learning. We're all learning.
It's a school.
Yeah. Yeah. They may be terrible at being in line for a while, which is annoying because that's maybe my least favorite part is taking them to the bathroom and back.
Are you creating a new segment for our show now? We'll see how the line
goes.
The
lineup? Yeah, maybe. Maybe this is another continual update. But yeah, and then the lessons are the easiest part. That's the thing I know how to do. It's more of like the transition periods and the extra stuff that's not lessons, but like I'm still kind of in charge of the kids. Fortunately, I'm not allowed to let kids just like run wild, but the discipline is up to the other teachers. So if there is a kid, and acting out isn't the right word because at 2 years old it's more like
that's life.
They're just like, I don't know what we're doing. I don't know why I shouldn't be doing this. But it's up to the other teachers to kind of sit with them and like demonstrate proper behavior and blah blah blah. And I get to just be like, this is an apple, yay! So that's, and working out that dynamic with the other teachers.
It's your dream adult job with children is being the aunt.
Yeah.
You get to just be like, here's the thing. All right, you're not interested.
Yeah, and then a big part of Chinese kindergarten is actually photographic proof that a teacher has paid attention to your kid. So a large part of our lessons is like I teach the concept, the vocabulary that we're learning, and then I have to go around to each child and then whatever activity we're doing, like help them, but in a photogenic way, help them with the activity so the parents can see like I spent one-on-one time with your kid, which feels a little bit farcical sometimes. But again, they're babies. They're literally babies. So some of these activities are just to like try out the idea of doing activities more than like, oh, you got it right. The older kids, the 4-year-olds can like do the puzzles and do the put the beans in the cup in the right number as indicated by the label. With some help, they can get that done. But the 2-year-olds are just like, I got beans, I got cups! And so it's a success that they don't eat the beans, first of all, but then that they can, like, pick them up and put them in a cup and, like, yeah. So it's not academically rigorous to teach 2-year-olds.
You got beans, you got cups.
Yeah. It's weird. I'll say that. It's very weird.
Sometimes you have your urine trips and...
Oh yeah, on the first day of school, one kid wet himself twice, and like that happens. But we're
not giving any names.
Yeah, I could, but the thing about this particular set of accidents is he didn't really mind. Like usually kids pee and then they're like, I peed, and then like you can deal with that, and he just like went off in a corner and peed and then like came back with wet pants and is like, all right, I'm ready to go. I'm like, no, you are not. And then there was a rogue poo on the floor, which was very exciting. But that only happened the first day.
Everyone gets upset. Once again, the first day is very upsetting.
It was a rough day. There has been no poo since then. A little more pee, but not as much.
It's not a segment we want to continue.
Yeah. I mean, last summer we had the vomit report. Fortunately,
so far,
that has not reoccurred.
We'll see what happens when you start to get those special days where it's like make a cake.
Well, the problem is like on birthdays they have cake and then they're like, the cakes the parents pick out are like so
sugar pies.
Yeah, it's because it's not just a cake. It'll have like chocolate candies on top and like an extra cookie in the middle and then like candied fruit. They're like maximized sugar, and it is. I never realized this with hanging out with mostly adults and even teenagers. Like when babies have sugar, it is like a drug and they go insane. And then that's where a lot of the vomit problems happen. We got a couple birthdays coming up this month, so we'll see. I'll keep you posted. But yeah, I mean, I hate change, so.
And so do babies.
That's that, and so do babies, so I really sympathize with them. But the nice thing about this new schedule is I have 3 afternoons off a week, which has been luxurious. I mean, I'm still working 20 hours with 10 hours on call, which... but
well, it's not like you're an EMT, though.
Yeah, it's... I've been pretty clear with the school. On call means like the day before they need to tell me that we're cashing in our chips.
It isn't that there's an emergency poop has landed.
Yeah, because that's not my job. There's no emergency that you need me for. That's kind of my philosophy of life.
And we found too that like even at our first major school, we were kind of, because we lived on campus, kind of there for emergency calls, but a lot of times we were like, because we had so much time, we'd be like in a different city, in a different province somewhere.
Yeah,
and so they would call us up and like, could you come down to the auditorium for a contest or something? Like, we're in Hong Kong.
Well,
like,
and I was,
okay, it's fine.
Yeah, I would say the way things work is a lot of like, the emergency is poor planning.
Right.
And what's that saying? Like, poor planning on your part does not constitute an emergency on my part. I've held pretty fast to that, which to mixed success. I'm not going to change China. That things get done last minute. That's just how it is.
And a lot of times,
I'm just trying to make space for me to have to do the least amount of last minute stuff as possible, because that is really disruptive, and I don't want to.
Yeah, a lot of times those emergencies are like, remember that the marching parade that they were going to have, and all of a sudden there was like no drums, so they didn't know what to do. They were trying to look for our help, and we're like, well, we can't help you with anything. And they come around the corner with empty water jugs, and they're like, hey, we have a band now.
Yeah.
Like, that's the amount of emergency that we're
if we don't help, it still gets resolved.
Yeah. We felt guilty at first of just like, what can we do to help? We don't know. And then they're like, forget you.
Well, I am, another life tenet of mine is more people, more cooks in the kitchen does not make a better cake. And I think I'll be happy to be the one that steps back and like, you use your expertise on this. If you ask specifically for my help, I'll come in and help. But I'm just because you're all running around with your heads cut off, adding me to the mix does not fix that.
Yeah.
So I try to stay out of it.
Well, and especially being in a completely different culture, there's a lot of times that you just have no idea how something gets done. So like, the way we would help would be completely wrong and mess everybody up. Oh
yeah. Even after 8 years too, it's kind of hard to explain the nature of those, like, why we don't understand what's going on. I guess we still don't understand China. I mean, it's a complicated culture. 8 years isn't really enough. We understand some things a little better, but it is like, I don't understand even what the problem is here.
Yeah, that's a big problem. Sometimes, like getting out of a taxi cab in a new city or something, and we're like, I know we're here, and we need a cab, and everyone's yelling at us, and we're just, after like 10 minutes of like, we're on the verge of crying.
Yeah.
You're on the wrong side of the street, you dummy.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, that was a first-year problem.
That was a first-year problem, but they could be as simple as that you're just not...
Yeah.
I don't even see what's going on here. I'm just getting upset because I don't understand the problem.
Well, there's like also a more recent example. So the police, our local community police, are really stepping up something. And they've been sending me text messages, which I can tell are from the police, and then I run them through a translator, and they have information in them, but they don't seem to have a directive in them, until one of them came back with, so when you see this, when you get messages from this number, or if this number calls you, you should pick up the phone. So I was like, oh, I guess they just want some kind of response. So I wrote back like, just like, okay, and then the text messages stopped. But like, from the language of the original text messages, it wasn't clear like they needed anything from me. There was no instruction of what to do. It was just like, we're creating this community police together. Like, okay. And they just needed
How can we help?
They needed me to say okay, I think. I mean, we'll see. We'll see. And it's not just us. Like, around town, I can tell businesses and stuff are dealing. I keep looking at Peter instead of the camera. But around town, I can see evidence that the police are, like, in everybody's business. And I don't know what to make of that.
Well, I mean, it's one thing being the foreigner and knowing our place around here is that any time that the cops are involved, they're always really nice to us. It's always a really easy deal. It might be hours of paperwork, whatever. But just the mention of like, oh, the cops called is stop everything. What do we do? Yeah, it's usually just they just want to say hi. Yeah. But like it's enough. But then to find out that like, oh no, they're talking to everyone in town. Why are they talking to everyone in town? I don't know. Like I don't care at that point.
At the gym, they have the police because someone came to our apartment to give us a business card of our police liaison, I guess. And then, like, I went to the gym, and they have those same cards taped up to the front desk to, I guess, to be like, these are our police.
And it wasn't the police that showed up at our door. It was a couple of boys that showed up with a card on it, and I didn't know what. I mean, they looked like they came from True Value with like these little vests on.
Work vests.
And then they handed me the card, and oh, that's our police officer. Oh wait. Is that no? She would have come if it was something important. Yeah. But she sent some True Value boys over with a picture of her, going like, "Remember, we exist," or something. I don't know. It's fine. I'm not gonna worry about it. But for a minute, you do worry about it.
Yeah. Well, but don't ask me how I know. But if it is serious, they'll send a squad car out for you and take you with them.
If it really is something that they're worried about, you'll be worried about it.
Yeah. If they're just calling, it's nothing.
Yeah. And even if it's around town, it's not. They're not like going around saying like, you know, there's, you know, a gas leak or something that's blown up. They're probably just going around town going like, so how's everybody? Are you fine? Like,
yeah, I mean, it just seems to be a press to increase the visibility of our community local cops.
Yeah. If it's upsetting to anyone, it's maybe just like street vendors because they just have to pack up their stuff and go like,
oh yeah, which is a bummer because I like street vendors, but they get shoved along by the police.
But they'll be back.
Yeah, because this will die down or change or whatever.
It's changeable. Yeah. The first words we ever heard that were the most important from our first boss. Yeah. But Linda, why? Why is this happening? It's changeable. Wise words.
Other news. I paid a tariff. Our hard drive is still in Chengdu, but it's made it to China, and as of yesterday, I think, I just checked on FedEx, it's been released for final delivery to our apartment, but it won't come till Thursday. But part of the holdup was that I had to pay a tariff, because it's an almost $200 drive, which I just thought was funny, given the loaded meaning tariff has between China and America right now. Now I'm in China as an American paying a tariff. What's working there? But I'm happy our drive is almost here.
Thank goodness.
It's complicated because I had to field several calls at several stages of the journey. Like when it came into China in Shenzhen at the port of entry, they called me just to get some information about what the drive was for. It was for my personal use, blah, blah, blah. I had to write a letter saying that. And then it was funny because the guy called and says stuff in Chinese, and I can tell he's talking about a package, so I don't hang up. Because sometimes it's just ads, so I'm just like, oh, sorry, 听不懂, bye. But this one, I was like, I said in Chinese, like, I'm really sorry, my Chinese is so bad, but this is about my package from America, right? And then he switched into English, which was like astonishing. That never happens. And that was like...
Unless it's Shenzhen calling.
Yeah, Shenzhen. When Shenzhen calls, they can speak English. Anybody else I have to deal with on the phone.
Shenzhen's like...
We have to muddle through.
That's like calling New York.
Yeah.
They're fine with everybody.
Yeah. So I was gearing up to like go step by step through what he was saying, and then we just switched into English, and it was like, oh, that's easy. But then when Chengdu called because I needed to pay the tariff, she did not speak English, so we did have to go step by step through. Okay, there's a package. Oh yes, it's mine. You need my address, but I can't say it on the phone. Oh, I'll email it to you. Okay, here's my email. And we got it done.
Woo!
Yeah, so that's funny, but I paid a tariff. And then for a basil plant update, it's still thriving out there. It's getting big and bushy. I plucked some with the intention of making a pesto, but it turns out I looked up a recipe. That it's not nearly enough, so we'll have to get a pizza or something in the next day or two to use that. And then I'm gonna let the plant grow maybe till next weekend, maybe even till the weekend after, and then just harvest it all. I found a good recipe. We don't have a food processor, so I found a recipe that is like Italian grandma's, is how she phrased it, all by hand, which is a little more PC rather than a smooth emulsion.
Oh, not politically correct.
Oh, PC, not PC. Yeah, yeah. It's more like.
It's like it's just an Italian grandma. Why are you?
No, that there's separate textures of the garlic and the basil and the nuts because it's chopped, not blended.
Do you think it's maybe something that we should go back to the store and buy another basil?
I don't know.
I mean, if this guy's going pretty good, maybe we can handle two. This is how people end up with like broods.
I do have 2 empty pots. Yeah, because I'm not sure how much longer the growing season will be. Because I think we can make it till the end of October. I think it stays pretty warm until then.
What's the kind of temperature that they're looking at that they like?
They like between like 20 and 25 degrees Celsius, which is. We're actually still pushing 30 most days.
Yeah, it's pretty hot out there.
Yeah, so
I had a beautiful rainstorm last night.
Yeah, well, that was nice. It really cooled things off. It was quite hot, but as is Luzhou's tendency, it was raining and still humid.
Yeah. It's like the sky is sweating.
But yeah, I don't know. And then I think we can grow it inside. It may not get as lush because it won't get as much sun.
One of the nice things about our main patio, this one too, I guess, is that it kind of works as a hothouse, even in the wintertime.
That's true. If I close the glass windows, it might stay warm enough in the sun. I would have to bring it in at night. But possibilities. I do also want to order some mint maybe and grow mint.
Whoa.
And then I'm out of herbs because we don't actually cook, so it's not like get some time. Why? Like mint we can put in our Watsons and have delicious minty club soda.
Get a little bit of lemon.
Oh yeah. Luxury.
Sometimes we can find lime.
Yeah, that's a plan. And then the other ongoing series is Rubik's Cube, which I don't really have any updates on. I'm still learning the Friedrich method, which is memorizing a lot of different algorithms, as opposed to the beginner method is like a set of algorithms per level, so maybe like, I don't know, 4 or 5. And then you just do them till it's finished. This is more targeted algorithms for specific cases that you only have to do once and then it's done. But it's a lot of memorizing, so I'm still working on that. But funnily enough, on Wired.com, their video of the day was how to solve a Rubik's Cube. So I thought that was funny.
Nice.
I'm tapped into some kind of nerdness. But let's talk about some business. Our channel is moving along nicely. We got subscribers, we got watchers. It's all going well. While I was on vacation, I forgot to update our podcast to iTunes, but now I have. So
you weren't able to listen to us when you were on vacation? You didn't spend hours listening to us?
Yeah. No, I didn't. But the podcast, this show, if you don't want to look at us, you can listen to us on iTunes and have your or Stitcher or something else.
Wherever else your ear follows.
An RSS feed. All those links are in the description to this video, and you can listen to us as a podcast rather than a video, and that will automatically update weekly or however often I update it. But it is now back up to date, so if you want to put us in your ears, that's how you can.
Share it with your friends, walk around, blast it out of your boombox in the city.
Yeah. And then the other business thing I kind of noticed this summer is we've been getting a lot more solicitation emails of different sorts. Like, we got the makeup brushes, like, hey, we'll send you these makeup brushes for free if you'll put them in your video, or like, we can get you more subscribers, marketing stuff, which is interesting. I guess like 200 subscribers is the threshold where those marketers start to notice you. Or like this guy from a China-based service for couriering packages reached out, which if I ever am in that circumstance where I want to fly to America with no luggage, I'm gonna think about it. But it's interesting just to like, we've all of a sudden reached that level where people are like, hey, can we market directly to you?
Yeah, I don't think we're going to find you any customers or us any subscribers out of that. But thanks for noticing that we exist.
Yeah, and the courier service was like, maybe we can help your vlog, but it was more like, not like any kind of merchandising offer, but more like, hey, you live in China, you should use this.
Yeah.
And then if you like us, mention us on your blog. Which is a little bit different from like, hey, advertise our product.
Right.
And then I did get an email. If you are 𝗖𝗵cie RH, I got an email from a person who said they were a subscriber, but I was confused to the nature of their query and suspected they might be some kind of form letter / bot. If you are a real person, Mr. Olive, send me I'm really a subscriber. Send me your email again and rephrase your question. But yeah, so we're starting to see an uptick in like people reaching out to us, which is nice.
I've noticed that because we're posting, the way that we break down these videos themselves just means we have so many videos. We got like 100 videos in the queue that are waiting to go up, and we should be putting up more than one a day, but we're putting up 2 a day. But that just does keep, even as low as our numbers are, it does keep like a steady pattern, which our numbers are in the green for once. It's like, woohoo! We're not like sinking down.
Yeah.
So that might just kind of keep you at like, they're treading water, so that might hit some kind of algorithm.
Yeah, we just might be appearing more. But yeah, so that's our business. Let's, any more business?
Nope.
Let's go on to homeschool film school. So as I said in our opener, our topic today is what makes a good story versus just a pile of good ideas. And the reason we're talking about that is because we kind of went through that assessment this week. As we talked about last week, my project was laying out the stories we have so far on cards, which was very educational in that I could see where like, okay, this is the seeds of a plot versus this is just really a feeling, not a story. So this weekend, Peter and I worked together to take those ideas and really give them specific shape into a story. And I owe a lot of the thoughts behind this to the podcast. Oh, I don't forget their name. Script Notes. Script Notes is a great podcast, which I've been listening to. It's 2 screenwriters. I've I'm totally blanking on their name. Mason and John August. I forget his first name. Mason is the screenwriter behind Chernobyl, and John August is the guy behind. He wrote Big Fish, among other things. And they're guys they're working screenwriters. They're very active in the community. They both are very active in the WGA. So it's very like insidery business, inside baseball, inside screenwriting kind of podcast. But it is really informative. Not in that, like, Peter and I want to break into Hollywood, because we don't.
Or baseball.
But they also talk a lot about, like, the technicalities behind making a story. And they recently had an episode that answered the question, when do you know that you're ready to start writing? And thanks to them, I know that Peter and I, up to now, have been in a period of pre-writing. And we are still pre-writing, which is fine. And that pre-writing is the period of time where you're doing research, making outlines, playing with characters, playing with dialogue. But you're not actually composing a story.
Have they said, or anybody else for that matter, what is any kind of use? I mean, it's art, so it's whatever time is time. That doesn't really matter. But is there an average of, like, I mean, I imagine some people might be in that kind of development for years.
Yeah. I think it's different depending on what your original idea is.
Mm-hmm.
If you're starting from a book, maybe your research is a lot less, and if you're starting from a brand new idea, maybe your research is a lot more. And if you've licensed someone's life rights, you're going to do a different kind of research than if you're working from pure fiction or whatever. But they did not specify a time.
And when did we really start, like, put pen to paper, like, was it the beginning of this year, or was it the beginning of this summer?
That's a good question. February is when we had the idea to start writing fiction.
Mm-hmm.
And then the end of Spring Festival break, which was early March, I just remember about that time was where we kind of pivoted from we'll write fake Emily and Peter scripts that we'll play to maybe we could write a full-on script for other people.
So that was like pre-development then.
Yeah. And then from March to maybe June, I would say I was still kind of figuring out who the characters were.
Mm-hmm.
And then June, July, August, really kind of brainstorming, not plot ideas, because we didn't really have plot till last week, but more like situations that our characters might find themselves in.
So if for life planning, we've spent these near 8 years researching what our life would be like here, but then this is like, okay, let's start taking that as research and put it into making some kind of sense in our notebook. Yeah,
because a lot of these stories are taken from like stuff that's actually happened to us. And I would say part of the summertime gathering up of situations is like reflecting on situations, our experiences that might work well in this in the miniseries as plot. And then this week, Peter and I sat down. We had our cards. We laid them out on the table. Looked at like, okay, what were we trying to do here, and then what makes it into a story. And the difference here is, so your story is someone wants something, but something stands in their way, versus like they go out to the countryside, which is a story that we're working on. But now we know they go out to the countryside with the idea of moving out there, but they realize it's just fantasy. Or what's another one? Oh, yeah, just turning like the ideas we had into more of a logical progression that would develop over the course of an hour. Of like, the second episode is Patrice and David get a new job. And then we turn that into, instead of just like watching them do orientation and interview and go to a meeting and start classes. Those are all things that have happened to me, but in that order is not super compelling. There's no stakes there's no tension. So we turned it into Sugar, the boss, makes a job offer, but Patrice and David think they can do better. And so then there is the tension of like, I want you to work for me, we're not sure if we want to work for you. And then by the end, they work for her. But that gives something more to build up and then knock down and then like find a level ground, which is more compelling as a plot to watch. And then by laying out all these plots, by making them all have that push-pull tension, that's what fiction is for. You don't watch anything on TV that doesn't have, I want something, but this is in my way. That's right. That's the smallest unit of
even when you're watching
storytelling.
When you're watching reality TV.
Oh, especially because reality TV is so constructed and so contrived. It is like, Linda wants to date The Bachelor, but Yumi also. Right.
You can't have you can't have any kind of creative storytelling or narrative, which is why they're so popular, is because you can just walk into any scenario. That person's yelling at that person, and that one's making googly eyes at that one. Let's see what happens. And then it's just the job of the editors and the directors and the story directors to look at that and go, all right, get a shot of that guy, get a shot of that guy.
And sometimes even the producers whispering in their ears, like, can you go confront so-and-so about this?
Right. They have to actually
so it's all conflict.
Take those pieces and mash them into each other.
Yeah.
But you have to do that even in a fiction story in a way that's interesting and compelling. Otherwise, it's just a series of events that sort of ramble into each other.
Yeah, which is, I would say, what we have now is a series of events that sort of ramble into each other, and people are lovely. So now we've added more tension, more conflict, more stakes, which is more interesting and gives you something more to write to. Because I would say I was pleased, that's why I'm calling them a pile of good ideas, is because I'm pleased with what I've written so far. But it doesn't, putting it all together, there's no reason for it all to exist as one entity. Whereas now that we have these plots, there is a reason why these events exist alongside each other.
Because we even had to dealing with time. Is this something that has happened over 6 months, 6 weeks, or 6 days? It changes the story every time, but those actual events don't change. They can take place wherever they are. But to make sense of them by stringing them together, you have to.
Well, and it's easier to actually answer that question because we ran into the trouble, and I went through this myself a few times of what's the scale of our narrative and what are the stakes? And originally we had this big idea, and I think this is the problem of talking about your story too much rather than getting down to the details of your story, is we keep building it up, and I'll reveal here that our original end point was a massive car chase through the streets of Luzhou. And even though the stakes were actually, it turns out it was just a misunderstanding, because that's all sitcoms are, just a misunderstanding. It still was putting too much pressure on the stories that came before it to be epic. Whereas the pilot story is Patrice and David want to throw a dinner party, but no one can come. And that's very everyday, as opposed to they fear they're going to get arrested and kicked out of the country. And it was hard to reconcile those two, that start point and that end point, until we realized the stakes of the end point are way too high. So we dialed it way back down. And then we were able to make all 6 episodes feel like they were part of one whole.
Right. And the storytelling, the pacing itself was something that we were much more satisfied, and we would watch ourselves.
Yeah.
We'd watch a car chase through Luzhou in a second if you told it was us it was on right now.
Oh, yeah.
But the amount of work that it takes to go through that, the only place that makes it easier is in storytelling, of
the
actual work to get it done is so much harder, but to actually watch it isn't nearly as fun or easy. Again, we talked about Kevin Smith in the last episode, but like the original Clerks was Dante was going to get shot and killed at the end, and someone said like, "What are you doing that for?" And he was like, "Oh, I guess this is supposed to be, it's dark and gritty."
Nihilism.
90s, we're Generation X. Don't do that. Oh, okay.
Yeah, and deciding what your stakes are and deciding, what they're doing. Are they running from the police? That gives the whole project a different flavor than what we actually came up with, which is they have to move apartments, which is like, that's not an everyday occurrence, but that's a normal thing to do.
And it's full of stress no matter where you live either.
Yeah, and relatable. But so to get back to like deciding the time frame of your series, I think that gets answered when you decide what are they doing. And if it is like, if one of them is growing an oak tree, then the time frame of your story is going to be much longer than if they're growing a basil plant, for example, or if, whatever, you know what I mean.
Mother Nature grows the seed.
But I mean, that like, when you would decide, it's all, like, you do have to answer all these questions about their inner life and their motivations and their feelings and their philosophies and how they relate to the world. But if you get stuck in those questions, you're not actually writing anything. You have to decide, what are they doing? And then through what they're doing, you can show what their feelings are. And so to that end, we picked an A, B, and C story for every episode, with an order of importance. A is the biggest story, and C is kind of not a throwaway, but like a small couple of scenes gag. And then to put them all in the same episode, there should be like a way that they all come together. They don't have to. And if you watch your sitcoms tonight, you can track what the A, B, and C stories are and see if they do come together or if they don't come together. But when they do come together, it's very satisfying for the viewer and for the writer.
Well, it's the same thing as like following a stand-up comedian, where you're going to come with the callback. When you get that, no matter how contrived it is, you could be watching, I don't know, like Urkel or something like that, and you're like, oh, thank goodness they finished with that joke.
Yeah, so now we have these A, B, and C stories, which will probably in the future be up on our whiteboard, because it's helpful to have a visual rendering of what's going on.
If we like fill in like fake words behind it, so we don't give away the plot, we can reel it in behind you, and you can teach a little class here.
Yeah, and then I think our next step is to flesh out these A, B, and C stories by deciding like. And we've kind of already talked about this, just we need to write them down. Okay, the A story is this, so Act 1 is this, Act 2 is this, Act 3 is this. And then after that, still not really writing, what we do is fill in what are called the beats, which is like the smallest unit of action in a story. And the example I read was from The Matrix. Neo gets a phone call from blah blah blah. That's one beat of the story, and what that beat does is it's the inciting incident that gives us the rest of the movie. But then like, okay, so then the next beat is blah blah blah. It's not just like, well, Keanu Reeves is this like magic messiah for our computer controlled world. Like, you need to know, like, a phone call happens, then the car chase happens, then a phone call happens, he resists the call to action, then this car chase happens, he reconsiders, reaches out, Lawrence Fishburne, blah, blah, blah.
that's like,
The Matrix.
I was going to say, is there the car, I don't remember the car chase too well, but I remember the club, the phone call, and he goes to the club.
Oh yeah, I haven't actually seen The Matrix since I saw it in the 90s, so I just remember, like, he gets picked up by the agent.
Yeah. I don't remember it that well either, but I remember, like, that if I'm trying to recall something that is kind of burned in your memory, but you've forgotten, a next beat that it hits with me is that he gets a phone call, he's like, he doesn't want to leave his house because that's our whole like the feeling of the Matrix is all claustrophobic, and then he goes to a club and you see all these people and you're like, oh, so it's like he hangs out at these cool clubs but he doesn't want to be there. I was like, oh, that feels like a beat to me.
Yeah, so the beat is any kind of one after the other
that motivates the next act to go to a different place.
Reduce the action down to one sentence with a subject and a verb. And then that's when you can start writing. And of course, everybody says, do all this planning and then don't be afraid to deviate from it once you've got going. But I can totally see, like, just from 2 days worth of work between me and Peter, we've taken this pile of good ideas and we've made it into a story. And it is like, I can see it, I can kind of see it unfolding. I can see the relationships. We've even better defined the relationships between the characters. Like, we have these two women who are a couple, and it wasn't until we were working out the stories like, oh, they're not a couple at the beginning of the show. In fact, that's like kind of an underplot throughout the whole thing. They're secondary characters, but their will they won't they is also like a growing arc to the season, which was like so exciting to figure out.
As we've we've talked a bunch about finding your characters, which every writer does, of like the characters will tell about themselves to the writer. That we have, like, you've got these two characters that you came up with and you're like, okay, that'll be nice for them to be a couple. But it's not until like we sit with them and we find out, like, well, why are they? Oh my God, they're not a couple yet. Oh, we get to see that happen. Yeah. Oh, now we're really into their lives.
Oh, because we need plots, and this part of their not getting together and then getting together are like a ton of plots. Yeah. Let's use it.
So they went from like a couple that you told me about that you created that were sitting back here in the room and said maybe a couple of funny things, to all of a sudden they're actually a major part. And it was almost like we didn't like plan any of that. Like it's like they stepped forward and said, like, we got a story to tell? Oh, cool.
Yeah, and then like, before our eyes it was like, well, this is true.
Yeah. And it started to unfold of like, where did this one come from and how did they grow up and what were their parents like and what's the family.
And it's all because we needed these characters to do things.
Yeah.
And then like, through what they do, you can figure out even the other secondary characters. I feel like a lot of the work we did, because a lot of the work up to now was focusing on our main two characters, and then a lot of the work we did this week was like, well, why are these other characters there? What do they do? Oh, they do this. They're an obstacle this way. They're an opportunity this way.
Some of it's form and function, where you're like, oh, I can plug that guy in here. We'll make him this guy.
Yeah.
Just because you need something there.
And like we talked about the bad guy, or not the bad guy, but the kind of protagonist a couple weeks ago, who is like an amalgamation of several annoying people that we know, and it's delicious to write him saying horrible things. But it is also like he has a narrative function of being in the way, being kind of a tempter to David when David is floundering, and then like, well, there's purpose to everyone. The more
you've been digging into that, he's gone from like a swirly mustache Billy Zane to like an actual character that like, oh, now I'm interested in who he is.
Yeah, and in season 2, he might even have an A story.
If he plays his cards right.
Yeah, because now he's a real person. He's not just like an obstacle. Because he does things. And so that was really satisfying, and in contrast to like last week's watching back the playback when I was like, well, this is a time where maybe you would give up, but we're not giving up. Like, I feel a lot more confident, like we've got something and we're moving forward. And it's all about the structure and all about placing your chess pieces in the right place. And then we'll deepen that even further to like, okay, in a 30-minute episode, these 30 things happen. And then we start to put them in actual scenes and write dialogue for them. And then it's harder than this, but it is a matter of just like, okay, I have the whole map, just like put the embellishments and the decorations on.
Mm-hmm.
And so at this way of working is definitely, at no time is the entire project riding on your shoulders, and you don't have to get it all done at once. So every step feels like, well, all I have to accomplish is this, and this is doable.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely, I was never against structure, but I like.
In fact, you're quite the person that embraces structure as much as possible.
But I guess I can see like the indie, the outsider objection of like, ugh, TV is so formulaic. Why I have such creativity in my heart. Like, okay, so use that creativity in the right way, and these rules exist because they work, and these structures exist. They can be formulaic if you write dull formulaic ideas into them. Well, if your ideas are good, then it's going to sing, even if it is like, well, every sitcom has, hey, we have a problem. Hey, it's a bigger problem than we thought. I don't know if we can get over this problem. Oh, we did. That's every story ever, unless it's experimental stories.
Right.
And, once we get a little more experience under our belt, I feel like we can even start messing with that. But we're painting the fruit.
We're painting the fruit. When you go back to starting with, like, it might end with a car chase.
Yeah.
That is like the first thing that you're going to go to. Anytime that you're watching something that does that, that was the first idea.
Mm-hmm.
Probably. Unless like somebody, or the very first idea of like, I want to make a car chase.
Yeah.
Like there isn't, that's where you're going to go. That's where we went of like, it doesn't really matter. We're telling a story about, we got some characters we like, we got a city that we like, and we'll tell the story as it goes along. Yeah. We need a spine to put that story on. Where's it going to go? I don't know. They could end in the car chase. The cops chase them. That'll be fine.
And it turns out a car chase isn't a spine.
Right.
And if you consider the stakes of a car chase, it was inappropriate for actually the story we wanted to tell.
It's inappropriate for the city. I don't know if there's ever been a car chase in the city.
Yeah. The traffic in Luzhou is such that a car chase would be futile.
It's small, it's hilly, and it's a peninsula trapped with bridges.
Yeah.
A car chase would actually just us being stuck on a bridge, probably.
If anything, if you were trying to make a getaway, you'd do it on foot.
Yeah. Jump a little crane boat across the river.
Yeah.
That would be. Now I'm talking myself back into it.
Season 3, I think. Because I already have the stakes for season 2. It's a wedding! But yeah, so we've been having a lot of fun with that. And it is like, when I went to bed last night, I was even still filling in details that I feel like are going to be good. And what? And back to that, the car chase, deciding that the stakes are too high, because of the emotions of that. We had to have a conversation of like, how emotionally realistic is what's happening to these characters. Are we going to have scenes where you, the viewer, are crying along with our characters? And I kind of don't want that. I didn't want that. And like what I said was more along the lines of like, when Liz Lemon has a breakdown, that character is feeling those emotions, but you as the viewer aren't like, oh, you're laughing at her because it's funny. And that's kind of more the flavor of what we needed.
And any kind of like heaviness as like this isn't, King of Queens or something like that. Yeah. But we also we talk a lot about Dan Harmon because we listen to his Harmon cast all the time. And when you're watching something as ridiculous as Rick and Morty, I mean, there's a lot of episodes that just go dark out of nowhere. I mean, it's all dark. But but
then they'll leave you feeling very upset.
Yeah, as just like a man alone.
Yeah, the characters on screen are upset, and you at home are also upset.
And that just ends with like, you're all alone and gonna die.
Yeah,
and it's gonna be horrible
in a convincing way, like not like, oh, that's so funny.
Yeah, it's not cute of like, ha ha. It definitely was like, crap.
And that's not our point of view, and that's not our mindset. I mean, I enjoy existential horror. That's why we watch Rick and Morty.
Right.
But, like, the story we want to tell about China is, like, it is weird and overwhelming, and that's what's fun about it.
Well, yeah, we see that a lot with, and we've felt it ourselves as being expats. There's a story. There's usually 2 black and white paths of the rose-tinted glasses that everyone talks about, of like, woohoo, I just got here, it's so wonderful, I'm having such a great time, and then in 6 months, it's terrible, and life is over, and I hate it, I gotta get out.
Mm-hmm.
And the people that have been here longer always laugh at the ones that have just gotten here, like, hey, there's me at a temple, wee! And that story itself is, I mean, you can tell either story, but it's the one in between where you're just like, we're just kind of sticking it out and noticing things. Sometimes it's worse than others. Sometimes it's amazing than others.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it's just kind of weird and strange. And if we are telling the story that we feel that we try to live, it's mostly a day-to-day basis of like, well, that's a weird thing.
Yeah.
And it's funny.
Yeah.
So let's move on with telling the story in that fashion rather than being over-dramatic, because over-dramatic itself can feel like it's just too much. We have a queue full of TV shows that are way over-dramatic that we enjoy, but we're not watching.
Yeah.
Because I don't really feel like examining the depths of what the world is in now. I don't want to look at a movie.
Well, and I think there's a way to be a true reflection of the world that's around you without just like dragging you through hopelessness.
Yeah.
Because I think, you know,
or cluelessness.
The foibles that we come upon in China, the absurdness that we see is like the absurdness of living in a society, and like you can choose.
There's going to be a rogue poop.
Yeah,
somewhere.
There's going to be rogue poop, and you can like collapse because of it, which I kind of did. But then like I came home, dusted myself off, and like found what was funny about it so that I could go back to work the next day and do it again. And then there was no rogue poop, so it was okay.
And finding that in our story, of how do you really want the tone to be, that's definitely been a journey for us.
Yeah. And we rejected a story that was like 2 of the side characters try to rope one of our main characters into a business, because like the only end goal is either they start the business, which we didn't want to drive the plot into like now she runs a business as well as being an English teacher, or like the business dissolves and then we don't really see those other 2 characters anymore. Mm-hmm. And then so what we changed it into is one of the side characters gets Patrice a gig on TV that goes hilariously wrong, and so it blows up by the end, but it does not then kick Norbert, the side character, out of the story. He gets to continue being friends with everybody. Whereas, like, if his business fell apart, like, they wouldn't really be friends or hang out anymore. Yeah. So just, like, those kinds of considerations, like, what kinds of misunderstandings do we want to have? What keeps the story on its track? And because, of course, with sitcoms in the present day, there is actually a little bit of change and development expected over the course of a season, but it still is very much like by the end of the episode, Mrs. Crabapple, right? That's how you say it? Crabapple, the teacher on Simpsons. Yeah. She's, maybe she won the lottery and left the school, but by the end of the episode, she's back teaching. Mm-hmm.
Well, and we have...
I don't know why I chose her. That's such an obscure character.
And,
I guess teachers.
And she died.
Yeah. Well, and so, yeah, there's a good counterexample. She did die, and then...
But we've had, like, even...
That stayed true.
We have a really hilarious possible season. Maybe it's a completely different story that takes place in a hospital wing.
Oh, yeah.
Mostly in a room with really sick people. Like,
right. Based on a real life happening that was not hilarious and funny.
Right. But, yeah, like, do we cram that into what we're doing now, or elements of that? Yeah. Or are we like, that's, the actual tragedy in it is actually too funny. Like, I think there's a whole season.
Well, I guess even at the time there was stuff we were laughing at.
Oh, yeah.
Because, that's our natures, is that we're going to see what's funny about a given situation.
You can't spend over a month in a foreign hospital and not be like, this is just funny.
This chaos is hilarious. Because otherwise you just
later to be announced
give into despair. Yeah, I don't. That maybe that exists in our same universe. I think that's a different set of characters, though.
Right.
But maybe there
is.
But
but initially we were thinking about how would we tell that story somewhere in our canon.
Yeah.
And we kept pushing it around, and we're like, let's just push that aside because it's too good to lose.
Yeah.
But
that's in pre-development.
That also might be more like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, where there's going to be some dark moments. And what we're working on now, I don't really see dark moments that are more than just like weird.
Yeah, but it's interesting, like, as sitcoms have progressed as an art form, I'm going to call it an art form, TV is important. We all watch it all the time. There's a number of tones available to your sitcom, and it can be like your CBS laugh track studio audience, wackadoo, whatever that Joey sitcom is that you were trying to.
Oh,
he's a dad with a plan, man with a plan.
Man with a plan, I think. Good job.
That is
I was gonna call it Dad with a Thing or something.
Dad with a Thing. I think it's Man with a Plan, where it's just like a couple of sets and like it's very much plug in plot A, plug in plot B, plug in plot C, gag laugh, gag laugh, or something like Baskets on IFC, which is very much like the emotional portrait of a man lost in his life, who's wondering how to be an artist in a life that doesn't want that from him, and how does he relate to his family who doesn't understand him. But that's also a sitcom, and it is also built on that same structure. It just has like more emotional depth, and it's funny, but then there are also moments, not even that are sad, but that are just like touching.
Yeah, there's poignancy, and sometimes you can deal with the fact that it's like it's not on a set and there's no laugh track or whatever. There are tones that you can hit with music and stuff that make it feel more cinematic. But I mean, there's other shows like what's that show? The woman who's a comedian. It doesn't really matter. But there's stuff that is filmed as a sitcom, or like Love. Yeah. Like that, a sitcom format, but it's filmed.
Yeah, and it's on location.
Right, and it does seem to have like more weight immediately than a regular sitcom that's on stage.
Right. Well, even like The Good Place those are sets. That's not on location.
Right.
But it's
I guess that's traditional set sitcom writ large.
Yeah, it's very much gag driven, and it's very much like the formula is twisted a little bit so that there's like a huge cliffhanger at the end of every episode. But it's exploring what it means to be a good person and what happens when we die.
The poignancy of a show like that, though, does tend to be like it's a bigger question because everyone's dead, so no one has to worry about.
Everyone's dead, and that's not a tragedy.
Yeah, so the sadness isn't just like, oh, you've wasted your life, like or your life.
We're over that. We're dead. What does it mean to be judged as a person, and what's your moral value?
Yeah. What did you do before then?
Yeah.
That made you end up where you are.
Yeah.
So that makes it a little easier than just like moments of just, well, I guess that's all there is.
But I mean, all of those shows are all sitcoms.
Yeah.
But they have vastly different tones, and that's the exciting part of like, it might sound, I think even for us, I was a little embarrassed to say like, are we writing a sitcom? I think several times we were like, we're not really writing a sitcom, but I think that we are, and that doesn't mean that it has to be hacky and joke-filled. I mean, it is going to be joke-filled because we're very funny people. But it doesn't. There's not just one thing that means anymore, and that's the exciting part.
This might be an easy go-to, but the first thing that I can think of is let's go back to a sitcom that's taken seriously is maybe MASH. I mean, there's got to be something before that, but that really is like a flagpole that is.
Yeah, I guess it dealt with like social issues, and then it also was just very farcical sometimes. And then the farce was also in service of the idea that war is absurd. Yeah, so it's not like there weren't weighty sitcoms or like All in the Family or anything Norman Lear. if the writing is exploring real human relationships and real human issues, then there you go.
Right.
It's not just throwaway garbage.
And some of the stuff that we've already talked about, like it's surprising that there could be any success with the relaunch of One Day at a Time or the Carmichael Show, like
as an update to the All family.
I don't know. Yeah. I mean, there's got to be an actual story that hasn't been told that is just a remake of an old story, an old Norman Lear.
Right. Well, that's like there's two sides to that of like find something new, but philosophically there's only 6 stories in the world anyway.
But it seems like this generation has gone to not only go off platform to your whatever Hulu or whoever's available at this point, but you're like, I'm going to film this and do it, off from studio money. Maybe it's like, I mean, I don't know how Baskets got made. I mean, it looks beautiful, but I would imagine it's off the back of 𝗣𝘵𝗵𝗶 having such huge...
Well, I think it was when Louis C.K., before we found out he was a monster, he had the deal with FX where they were just like, we'll give you money and you do what you want, we're happy with your work. And he was friends with 𝗣𝘵𝗵𝗶, so he was like, let's do a show.
So there's...
and 𝗣𝘵𝗵𝗶 was like, I'm not doing a show unless I can be a clown. I'm pretty sure that's the...
Or even, what was the Bill Hader show of...
Oh, Barry?
Yeah, like you've got it. You got a show.
Yeah.
Do what you want.
Yeah.
What do you want to do? I don't know.
Yeah.
Let's make it, I'm a hitman. All right. What makes that different? It's me.
Yeah.
Bill Hader is a hitman.
Yeah.
Who's not going to watch it? So we give it a shot.
Yeah.
You've got an audience already. But it's not any kind of big money that is, who's... Are you going to watch this at the football game? It doesn't matter because it's on whatever, Showtime or Netflix or whatever.
Yeah. And we're not going to watch the football game. But I think that's, along with the different tones available to you now in sitcoms, different modes of conflict. Like, I'm going to get very social justice warrior here right now. But like, the industry still is very white male dominated. Probably all like Harvard grads even, like that small pool of people and that small pool of experience and life diversity.
And we're not going to name names because that might actually help our viewership and ratings, and we don't.
Well, I don't have any names in mind. Just like in general, that we're starting to welcome new voices from that, and we're starting to see more people of color and more women of color and more gender spectrums and more sexualities. We do get to see these more interesting takes on life, and somehow I think that's manifesting is in the idea of like, so I was saying before, like your story has to have a conflict, but what constitutes a conflict and how that's acted out, it does not always have to be two people who want different things are yelling at each other now, or like physical violence, which tends to be the easiest go-tos. But and we've talked about this before, of like Take My Wife, which is 2 lesbian comedians, the conflict was always very gentle, and it was like about how to best support someone while maintaining your own integrity and looking after yourself well enough. And so the conflicts wouldn't really be like, you wouldn't call them fights. It was more discussions. But it was I really appreciated seeing like drama play out in a way that was more kind and funny than actually like dramatic.
Well, one thing that we found as we're starting to get further and further into writing our characters and what are their motives and where are their characters' trajectory, is a lot of the time our characters are all kind of doing this, going off into the same direction, and we're like, well, we got some kind of conflict between the two, and like, but they're not mad at each other, so
right. And so we had to find ways where like we definitely didn't want our main couple to bicker, because that's annoying. We want
even our main characters, like that are with the secondary characters, or even our bad guy. We didn't really want them to like fight with the bad guy.
We wanted them to have relationships.
We're having a hard time calling him a bad guy.
Yeah. Both people who I would have called protagonists are like, I've already in my own eyes redeemed them into like, they're just trying to get their thing done. But yeah, I'm
trying to do for me.
We want our characters to have like actual good relationships and like have conflicts that reflect, because Peter and I don't fight, but we do have conflicts in our life, and so we wanted to kind of show that mode of being.
Yeah.
I mean, we fight a little bit.
But it doesn't. We don't yell because we're like, we want to solve this, so we talk about what's
so like what happens when two people are actually on the same side but have a conflict is actually like much more of a deep thing to explore.
Right.
It's easy to be like, I want that yellow truck. No, I want the yellow truck.
Yeah, we're not poor. We're not leaving rogue poops. If we can.
Unless something goes terribly wrong. Yeah, so that's all where we're at. It's a really exciting time. It really feels like the ideas are just bubbling up, and now they have a direction to go in because we've provided that framework. Off camera, I'll have stuff to tell you I think about last night. But let's move on to commentary.
One last thing I was thinking. Do you have anything to talk about with? We just started talking about doing location scouting, and what that kind of means. Going from our character, we'll worry about our other work if we get to it. We get to it. If not, but I think the jump of like talking about our characters and what they have to do to actually like looking at like, where are we going to put these in town? Like, what do we know about our town? And we talked about with our friend Andrea, who's going to help us out with some of this stuff too.
Yeah, well, and I think
moving into a phase where we might be introducing other people into the fold.
For now, I think location scouting is a good idea, but in a very preliminary way.
Even like we're thinking about it.
Yeah,
we don't know exactly where to
taking
go.
it for inspiration and taking it for like reminding ourselves of all the different places Luzhou has to offer, versus like, okay, this is perfect for this, let's lock it down. Because by the time we're finished in a year with the script, that's been my continual prediction for the past 6 months, so it's going to take a year.
2 weeks.
I mean, by the time we're done with the script, these perfect places may have disappeared, but I think it is a good idea to get the juices flowing and to start having stuff in mind and to see, like our friend Andrea mentioned, we in town have a couple ghost balls, and that's like such a Chinese thing.
And they're
totally fits the mood of like, what is this weird place?
And they're easy to get into. They're like the construction sites are pretty much just a free-for-all. You might be a security guard that might chase you down or something like that. But people do just tend to like walk through construction sites, and that makes for really fascinating areas. There's a lot of people that are into like urban exploration in different cities and across China that, I mean, it's kind of terrifying to me, but you can just kind of walk into an old empty building. What could we do with that is...
Yeah, and I guess it helps to envision. So now we can see our characters now to like go actually to a place and envision them in this place and interacting with that place. I think will further the richness of our vision.
Right, and as we're starting now, I mean, we just started talking about it and thinking of different places and brainstorming. But I would like to, I mean, we're going to bring the camera out with us when we go, so we'll have further episodes of this as we start to like look at like what makes a good scene, a good location. Because we don't even know yet. I mean, this is all part of our exploration of...
Well, another thing from the Script Notes podcast, 2 things actually that they mentioned in different episodes. One was, I think this was one of them, like when you're screenwriting, it's not just like you're summoning these words. It's more like you're seeing the movie happen and then writing down instructions for the actors and everybody else of how to make that happen. And I would imagine it's beneficial to like have actual places in mind. Especially I'm not great at visualizing spaces, to like have to go make this file in a literal sense with the camera of like, here's places that exist that you can use as your backdrop. I mean, much like you said, artists often have a compendium of like, here's what street lamps look like, and here's what's, because it's hard to just like make that up out of thin air. And not that you're like copying this is what a street light looks like, but like your brain works better if it can have an actual reference. And the same for like
a great
places.
In the Robert Crumb movie, he's going through his sketchbook and showing you photographs of particularly its telephone poles, and he's just like, you just can't have this stuff in your head, because who wants to like remember what a telephone? But there's so much ugliness in the world. Yeah, what you're doing is this creative stuff. Like, don't take up all your brain space with this clutter of the real world. Yeah. But you do need the real world as your reference. Yeah, like especially with like his work, because he has so much like Americana. He's like telling a story of like some blues guy on a Delta, time period piece, that like, what does like a crappy road in Louisiana look like from 1962? Like, I have no idea. Like, you're gonna have to go look at some photographs, and then it's gonna be ugly. Like, how would it, like, it's just a road with a telephone pole. But that's part of your world, because it's not this blank white page with just your figures appearing sketchily in the middle of it. You do need the entire. It's your research world, and that's what we're talking about with getting these, like, having the research of living here long enough to we have places that we know, the ones that are still around. Some of them are gone. Yeah. Some of them will be here. Some of them are going to be new places. And I mean, we live right on the Yangtze River. It's like, I can look at it right here. Like, how are we going to use that? Yeah. If anything, we were saying like last night, if you go to New York City, you're going to film like, Washington Park or the Square or wherever that's someplace somebody might recognize. We have to use the Yangtze River because it's right there. Yeah. The monuments around town are not knowledgeable to most people, even in China. But there are certain places, like we were talking about, like a dinner boat that is on the river, a fishing dinner boat. Yeah, it's a fish restaurant that's like a 3-story boat. Yeah, that and there's a bunch of them on the river. Like, how could we not film something there? Yeah, yeah. So then we have to go like, well, which one do we want to like choose, and who has the best fish? I don't know. So I guess for now we're kind of like building up our catalog of like, these are the places where it could be. Because the other thing that they said on script notes that I've kind of found very useful is, so we're writing TV and an episodic series versus a movie, and so for movies this more applies, but then for what we're doing, more has the flavor of a long episodic movie, or what people are saying. That you should never come back to the same place twice, or if you do, there should be something about the place that changes your character, or something about your character that changes the place. So like, place is not just a backdrop unless you're making Friends, where it is like the coffee shop. But even that, like, the coffee shop has a function. The coffee shop is the home base, because even their individual apartments, and as they make it a plot, even like that they're jealous of each other's apartments, and that are the home that gives if we're in the girls' apartments, the girls have the strength, and if we're in the boys' apartments, the boys have a strength. But the equal playing field is Central Perk. Right. But to the point where we actually have theme restaurants. Even here in Beijing, there's a Central Perk. Oh, yeah. That you can go visit, and it's made up, looks exactly like that. But that's because the nature that the story was telling was this. I'm just coming up with this now, but I think it's true. The battle of the sexes, of like, so the place gave weight to what storyline was being told, but these places don't change, and really the characters didn't change. That's now that you mention it. That's why Ross wouldn't move in with anybody, because he was such a control freak that he needed his own apartment to get away from everybody. Right, and he was on no one's winning side. Yeah.
And Phoebe was the outsider, so she also had to.
That's right. True. She couldn't be bothered with playing with that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Whereas he's like has to be guarded from it.
Yeah.
Where everyone else could just kind of be like, we're just gonna bounce the ball back and forth.
Yeah. So even in such a formula, there is like the place has a purpose. And for us, I think we're gonna have some locations that we return to just because that's what we're gonna do. But I would like to keep in mind, that the place informs what's happening, and changes in a place can reflect the emotional changes that we're trying to convey.
Mm-hmm. Even we have, like you were saying, that apartment changes and stuff. Like one of the things about China is that stuff changes so often.
Yeah.
Like we celebrate the fact that there's a couple of restaurants we've been going to for a number of years that like every time we go, hope it's still there. Yes, it's still there.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Sometimes we're not there for a year. We come back. We're like, we're gonna be so disappointed.
Well, that's stability is an illusion everywhere, and so China is really like busting that illusion.
Yeah.
It's a very like Zen idea of like there is no such thing as stasis.
Right, which is what
China is always changing.
What so many people.
Which is like an under thesis of our.
Yeah, it's upsetting for everybody, and it's upsetting for us that you can never actually pin anything down.
Yeah.
But that's how
everything works. As I said in the beginning of the episode, I hate change, but change is a constant.
And part of learning how to deal with that is part of the story that we have to tell.
Yeah.
Is that our characters can't actually just settle down and be like, this is our life, and they're not trying to change. They're not becoming Zen Buddhist of like, we have learned to accept change on the turn of a dime, or
maybe that's the finale.
that they go live on
yeah. But yeah, that's a good thing to bring up.
Well, thank you.
Do you want to do some commentary?
We're at 122, so let's save it for next time.
Okay. Well, I just want to mention we had 3 videos came out this week. You just moved to China. They closed the pool, and the most asked questions said about China, or whatever that convoluted title. The pool is actually a repost from last year, but still applies. They did just close our pool. And then the other 2 are brand new, so go watch them.
Yeah, we'll get into it in depth next week. Yeah. But we just posted them, so I'm still thinking about them.
Okay. Yeah, and we did have a lot to say about all the work we did this week.
And we want to go eat. We want to go eat pork rib dinner for.
Yeah.
Now.
So noodles to you.